Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am super excited for today's video. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys all about dark academia, what it is, what is the aesthetic, giving you guys some book recommendations that give off dark academia vibes. Dark academia, the aesthetic, has been around for a while, mostly on Tumblr, but very much in the last year on TikTok, the dark academia aesthetic has become super popularized. If you Google dark academia, the Wikipedia answer literally just says that this is an aesthetic that Tumblr and TikTok have popularized specifically in the last year, and potentially because of COVID? I don't know how true that is, but dark academia as a literary genre has been around since the late 20th century, specifically as societies moved on after the wars in the 1990s. Movement in literature often is a reflection on changes and movement in society. So as there was a shift in the 1990s towards rebuilding society and regaining control and knowledge, there was a huge increase in higher education attendance, and because of this, campus novels became super popular, and from campus novels came the dark academia genre. I did a paper on dark academia in my second year of university, which, I mean, kind of goes a little bit more in depth into the genre and also a few of the books that I talk about in this video. I'll leave a link to a Google Doc for of my paper down below if you are kind of a nerd like me and you want to go check out my paper. But today I wanted to go through and talk about all the books that I have read that give me dark academia vibes. And while there are definitely tropes and things that you come to expect from a dark academia novel, not all of these books are going to 100% fit those tropes and necessarily the genre, but I think these books are all really great and definitely do fit the genre in some way and could be a really great place to start if you're looking for some recommendations. The first book that I want to talk to you guys about is not necessarily the first ever dark academia book to exist, but it is arguably the most popular dark academia book out there, and that is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I absolutely adore this book. I remember I read this, I would have been 16 or 17, and this was the first piece of adult literature that I had ever read. I remember just thinking that this was the darkest, coolest, most mysterious thing that I had ever read. I remember being obsessed with this, so obsessed that I ended up studying this for both of my English classes in my last year of high school, my last year English, but also scholarship English, and I went on to talk about this book in my time at university as well. So not only do I think this is just a really interesting book, I think it is also an incredible book to study if you are doing any kind of English degree and you're looking for something interesting. You can get a whole lot out of this book and out of dark academia in general. But for anyone who doesn't know what The Secret History is about, The Secret History is about a group of students at a college in, is it New England? New England. And the story is told from Richard Papin's point of view, and Richard decides to go to university and he's almost instantly intrigued by this very exclusive group of students that are kind of infamous on campus. They are the select few students who take this, I want to say classics, but I think it's but specifically studying Greek classics, Greek mythology, that kind of thing. And Richard decides that he wants to go and study classics and he wants to get in with these students. He becomes friends with them, he gets into the class. And so this book looks at Richard's relationship with these other students and also the relationship between these students and their very eclectic teacher. It's dark, it's dramatic, it's fucked up. It starts with a murder, so, instantly gripping, intriguing, you want to know what is happening. And while I used to think this was the best book ever, I definitely don't think it is. There are plenty of criticisms about this book, and absolutely it's not going to be for everyone. I could totally understand why people don't like this book. All of the characters are horrible and super pretentious, and some of the content in this book is genuinely very disturbing and fucked up, but Donna Tartt's writing is just exquisite. The she definitely set the example for that kind of dark, gothic, beautiful writing that you would expect to see in like a dark academia book. This is essentially just like peak dark academia in all its glory, and if you haven't read this and you want to know what the dark academia genre is all about and you don't want to like read a whole bunch of books, this is the one that you want to pick up. This is like the main dark academia book. Another really popular dark academia book, I would say probably the next most popular dark academia book, would be We Were Villains. We Were Villains by M.L. Rio kind of has a very similar like concept. It follows a group of students at university. The story starts with, I think, our narrator, or at least one of the main characters, in prison, and we kind of get told the story of what happened back in university when the students were all together. They are drama students and they are all very, very obsessed with Shakespeare, and very much so the story parallels the Shakespearean plays that are included in the story. I personally did not like this book all that much. I gave this 3 stars, and I read this for the Dark Academia paper that I mentioned earlier that I will have linked down below. I definitely think that the writing was very intriguing, the characters were very interesting, very, very similar to The Secret History, but I would personally say a little more tame, probably not as psychologically disturbing, but still definitely gothic, dark, and kind of twisted. Plenty of people love this book as well. As I said, I think this is probably the second most popular like dark academia book, so I had to put this on the list, even though it wasn't my personal favorite. Also, for that dark academia paper that I did that I have linked down below, I chose to read The Lake of Dead Languages by Carol Goodman, and I specifically chose this book for this paper because I wanted to find a dark academia book that was more female-centric. There are a lot of issues with dark academia in terms of diversity, and I definitely think that is like a reflection on the society that it's commentating on, that the genre commentates on, the society of higher education, and also just the society that we live in. So I think it's very interesting to analyze, but it is, from like an enjoyment point of view, quite annoying when it's really quite difficult to find more diverse books. So I looked around, and this was one of the few dark academia books that was mostly centered around women and that I was able to get at the time. This book follows a teacher, and she returns to her old childhood school to teach, and the story is kind of told in 2 timelines. So we follow this teacher Jane when she's teaching at the school in the modern time, and she's watching these dark, mysterious things happen to some of her students. And also we follow Jane when she actually went to the school, and we see this kind of similar dark, mysterious thing happen in her past that eventually leads to a tragedy and eventually leads to Jane leaving the school. So the book kind of explores what that tragedy is, why Jane ended up leaving, through her coming back to the school and like experiencing these things all over again. I personally don't think that this is like the best dark academia book, but I wanted to mention it because it is a female-centered story written by a woman. I will say huge trigger warning for depression, and I think because of that, I think this story is a little bit more personal and not as I don't want to say detached, but like not as much of like a commentary on human nature and how fucked up the world is as, say, The Secret History or We Were Villains. I still definitely wanted to mention it because I think people could genuinely really like this. It's, you know, very Mr. Thriller type-esque, and I can't remember if the girls in this story practice like a witchcraft of some kind, but I did think it was like a little bit more fantasy leaning than the other 2. The Secret History is a little bit like fantasy leaning as well, but not as much as this. I wouldn't recommend this one as much as the others, but I still wanted to mention it because I think it's important. Okay, moving away from books that I read for that freaking dark academia paper that I wrote 2 years ago that I won't shut up about, I want to talk to you guys about Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is probably, I would say, after The Secret History, the most like dark academia-ish book that I have read, but this is also definitely like a paranormal fantasy as well. It is definitely more like magical than the other ones. This book follows Alex as she goes to Yale specifically to monitor these like secret magic societies that are a part of Yale, and so like definitely there is a kind of magical aspect to it, but there are also murders going on, and Alex definitely knows that this isn't just like your average everyday kind of murder. There's something a little bit darker, more supernatural, more sinister to it. And while I love Leigh Bardugo, I didn't actually really love this book. I gave it 3 stars. This is the first book in the series, none of the others have come out yet. I personally just felt like this moved a bit too fast for my liking, but that could be really good for a lot of other people. Each chapter, the only way I can think of describing it is like each chapter is like an episode. Like the book never stops moving. You're never going to be bored reading this because something is always happening. It is definitely a little bit spooky, definitely a little bit dark. I do think that because all of the like dark stuff that happens in this book is fantasy, it can be related to like the fantasy side of this book. It's not as like terrifying as like The Secret History or We Were Villains, but I do still think this is really good, and like the aesthetic that Leigh Bardugo creates in this book is impeccable. This would make for like great autumn-winter reading. Just putting that out there. If you're looking for something to read going into the colder months, I think this would be really great. The next book I want to talk about is one that I do have a physical copy of, but I've lent it to someone. I read this I think last year and I absolutely loved it, and that book is Bunny by Mona Awad. And this is like definitely first and foremost a horror thriller, but I think it fits. I think it fits the genre perfectly. This book follows Samantha as she is doing her master's in creative writing, I'm pretty sure, and in her program it is just her and this group of, I want to say like 4 to 6 girls, and they are called the Bunnies. Samantha doesn't like the Bunnies very much. She thinks that they're very strange. There's just something off about this group of girls, right? They're just a bit odd, and they all kind of act the exact same way. Think cult vibes, because they are essentially like a mini cult of girls who like to write, which personally I love. As someone who is doing their master's in creative writing, I really loved this story. I loved how dark it was. I loved how the limits of fiction and creation were like explored in this story, and it's explored through Samantha's relationship with this group of girls. She eventually gets invited into their group, and we see her kind of struggle to become friends with them, and then we see some really weird shit happen, and it is a very weird book, a very strange book. Gory, horror kind of vibes, very abstract, and if you like a concrete ending, you probably will not like this book because it leaves things very kind of unclear at the end. But boy, has this book stuck in my mind since I read it. I don't think I will ever forget this book because it is just unlike anything I've ever read before, and because it is set in a university in a higher education setting, and because we have this kind of these cult-like characters and this this exploration of how far education can take you, like what power you can get from education. I think this is a really great dark academia kind of book. Okay, I do have a few young adult kind of dark academia recommendations as well. The first one that I want to talk to you guys about is The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. This is just the first book, The Raven Boys. I do have all of them, but I honestly can't be bothered holding up the whole series. But this is a fairly popular young adult series. This story is about Blue, who comes from a very eccentric family, we'll say, and she becomes friends with these boys who go to a private school in her town: Gansey, Ronan, Adam, and Blue. And these 4 boys have a very like complex and intricate relationship like on their own, and then Blue comes into the mix, and it is just, I just think the character relationships, the dynamics are just so beautiful, and the writing in this is beautiful as well. The dark academia aspect, I think, kind of comes through the overall driving plot of the story. Gansey is obsessed with this old dead Welsh king who is believed to be I think, like a thing of legends. I don't think anyone really believes that he exists, but Gansey believes that he does, and Gansey is determined to find this old ancient lost dead Welsh king, and the story is just magical and heartwarming, and I love my YA to be character driven, and this series is definitely character driven. You will definitely love these characters, and just something about this like legendary old Welsh king and these group of 5 kids trying to find him, and there's magic and there's danger and there's romance. Something about it just ticks all the boxes and really makes me think of dark academia, gothic fantasy vibes. The next YA series I want to talk to you guys about is the Truly Devious trilogy by Maureen Johnson. I adore this trilogy. I think it is one of my favorite YA series that I have ever read ever in my entire life. This trilogy follows Stevie, and she's determined to get into this very elite school, a school that is specifically made for gifted students. I say gifted because basically to apply you have to have a very like specific interest. You have to have a niche of study. Stevie's special interest is true crime. She's fascinated by it. She loves solving murder mysteries, and this school that she applies to has its very own unsolved murder mystery. Well, I don't know if murder mystery is the right mystery. There's an unsolved mystery that involves the school, happened when the school first opened, I believe. No one's been able to solve it. Stevie is absolutely determined to, so she applies to the school, she gets in, and so she's, you know, investigating, she's trying to find out all about this crime, but spooky things are starting to happen while she's there, like in real life. A mystery is like unfolding before her eyes. This is just really, it is just incredible. It is so great. These stories are so gripping. I could not put them down. I think I read all 3 of these books in one sitting. Not all at once. I read the first 2 in one night. Genuinely, like, that's how good they were. I finished the first one and immediately picked up the second one because I had to know what was happening. And I finished the second one and I didn't realize that I had to then wait a year for the third one to come out, and that year was probably the most painful year of my life because you just have to know how this story ends. You start it and you cannot stop. But definitely creepy elite boarding school with an unsolved mystery. Try telling me that is not dark academia. You cannot. The next YA trilogy I want to talk to you guys about, I actually haven't read in like almost a decade. I read these when I was a very young teenager. So this is probably my most like cautious recommendation. I don't know how dark academia it really is, but from what I can remember, and I can remember a fair bit, it definitely gives off the dark academia vibes. And this trilogy is the Gemma Doyle trilogy by Libba Bray. This series, very much like The Secret History, starts with a murder, which then leads to Gemma, our main character, being sent to this boarding school. So I definitely think like the basic premise of this series definitely seems dark academia-ish, but I definitely remember that this has a kind of fantasy supernatural element to it. I know that there are other like realms involved, like spirit worlds that the girls end up going and visiting. It very much has that kind of exclusive cliquey group that I think Gemma ends up getting 2 friends, so it's like the little girl trio, a little trio of girls who get up to supernatural mischief, and there's a mystery. But I think it's something to do with Gemma's family. I just remember this was so like Victorian Gothic vibes, and I just remember absolutely loving this when I read it, and I have never really heard anyone talking about this trilogy like at all. And I know Libba Bray is actually quite a popular author. I'm pretty sure she wrote the Diviners series, I think, and I haven't read any of her other books. I've just read this and I remember absolutely loving it. As I said, I read it like when I was a very young teenager. I would have been like 12 or 13. So if you go and read it and you think it's bad, please keep in mind that this is mostly coming from 12-year-old Annie's recommendation. This was probably like my first dark academia book that I ever read, and I absolutely love it. And it's like the fact that I read it so long ago and I can still remember so much about it, I think that really speaks for itself. I definitely want to like revisit this series and see if it is as dark academia gothic as I remember, but if you're feeling bold, if you're feeling interested, I would recommend picking this up. And seeing as we're kind of talking about fantasy-esque books, I want to mention The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Also kind of The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. They're technically both fantasy books, and I would say The Night Circus probably isn't as dark academia as The Starless Sea is, but both of these books are so beautiful. I will probably find any way to recommend them just like ever in general because I absolutely love them and I think absolutely everyone should read them. But The Starless Sea is probably the most dark academia-ish of the two. This book follows Zach, and Zach is studying at university, and one day he goes to the library and finds a book that basically describes everything that he's doing at that moment in time. Obviously, he's quite scared about this, and it leads him kind of on this hunt, which ends up leading him to this like kind of magical cult. And I really do not know how to describe this book because it is all about stories. And because it's all about stories, because it's like the super meta book, it is so complex. There are so many plots within plots in this, but they all tie together to make this one really beautiful, phenomenal fantasy story. There is a queer relationship in this story. It's not really front and center, but it's there. I will say there are also queer relationships in most of these books that I've recommended. Not all of them, but most of them. But definitely they're not like a main focus, but they're there. If you're wanting queer representation, you might not like it because all of these books are tragic and dark and fucked up in some way, but they're there. But yeah, this has not just some of the best romance, some of the best plot, some of the best descriptions I've ever read. Erin Morgenstern's writing is like phenomenal, out of this world, next level. Like, I low-key worship her writing because I just think it is so stunningly beautiful. And this book, just with like the magical secret cult and some of the stories that are included within this story, just definitely give off the vibe. The vibe is there. I don't think this is actually like, I don't think I would consider this a dark academia book for sure, but this is like the next, it's close. It's the next best thing. It's definitely got very similar vibes. And really, I just want everyone to read this book and The Night Circus. If you haven't read The Night Circus, I know The Night Circus came out years ago, but please, if you haven't read it, it is so beautiful. That is definitely more of like a romance story, but there is like magic. It is also kind of dark academia vibes because there is an aspect of like research to it and a kind of exclusive group, but definitely more like, I don't know, The Night Circus seems very much fantasy to me, whereas this kind of feels like a whole jumble of different things, and one of those things could potentially be dark academia. So those are all the books that I've read that give me dark academia vibes, and these are all the pieces of literature that have come to influenced me and shaped my interest in this genre and inspired me to work on a dark academia project for my creative writing thesis. And these are all the books that in my mind have made me fall in love with the dark academia genre. Even the two books, We Were Villains and The Lake of Dead Languages, even though I didn't love them, I think they say a lot about the genre and I respect what they do. But that is it. Those are all the books that I want to talk about in this video. Those are definitely not like all the dark academia books that are out there. I have a very long dark academia TBR, which I will be making another video about. I really want to talk about all of the dark academia books that I am looking forward to reading, specifically while I'm working on my thesis, but also just in general because a lot of them, they just all sound amazing. So if you want some more dark academia book recs, but ones that I haven't read, look out for that video because it should be coming soon. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I really hope that you learned something or got some book recs that you're excited to try read sometime soon. I had so much fun filming this. I absolutely love dark academia, so I've had the best time talking about this. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well, and I will see you guys with another video sometime soon. Bye!